Itamex Ganatani. It's January 31st, 2014, and we're entering into the moon Bitaki some. Although I think this time around, what we're really bumping into is a Samachiki some, and I'll explain that in a minute. I headed out into the coulee Pitsiksina, and I just wanted to show from my vantage point up here on top what I'm seeing to begin with. First of all, down this way, downstream, you can see here there's a bit of open water, a lot of geese, maybe other waterfowl there. I gotta go check it out. And then a little bit even further downstream from there, you got another open patch here. There's a few birds there, more than a few. There's a good number of birds there. Okay, those two patches, especially this one at this end, is usually open in winter. There might also be this one open in the usual winters, but what's unusual that I'm seeing, and I normally don't really see this time of year, is this over here. I don't know what's going on. It looks like maybe it's frozen over again, but it looks like there was an open patch of water here that was linked to this open strip that goes all the way pretty much back to the confluence. This is the confluence of the St. Mary's and Old Man River, and right there the strip starts, widens out here. That's where I saw birds on my last visit to the coulee here, and then narrows again, goes around the bend, and then it looks like it had a big wide pool. I don't know if that pool is still open or not, but that pool is an unusual pool. I've never seen that pool in that particular place any other year. I do know that that spot in the river is, or at least it used to be, and I thought it still was, one of the very deeper spots, which doesn't make sense if it's opening up this early, because it's usually the more shallow spots that seem to get an opening sometimes, but I may be off there. I do know that the two other spots downstream that have the big openings now, those are shallow areas. So I don't know quite what's going on. I just want to record it because when I went to the Alexander Wilderness Park about a week or so ago, of course there was a lot of open water, and that was, I mean, pretty much the whole river was open. That was very different. So we have had another cold shot the last couple of days. It's -11 right now, and we had snow yesterday and the day before. And I'm just gonna head down and see what's new. In terms of what I was saying about the moons, whether this is Bitaki some or Samachiki some, a lot of people consider around February to be just generally called Samachiki some in Blackfoot, which is the deceptive moon. And what they were told by their parents and grandparents and such is that Samachiki some is so called the deceptive moon because this is when you get these shifty weather patterns that are kind of unpredictable. It looks okay. Next thing you know, you're caught in a really wet and deadly kind of a blizzard. But working with the moons, with the beaver bundle as I have been, I've got my own ideas about what Samachiki some is really about. And that is, I think it is the 13th moon that comes in on the odd year, the third or fourth year, the leap years basically. And it usually does come in at this time of the winter, at least from what I've seen, charting things phenologically for the last 7-8 years. The Blackfoot phenology is aligned with the moons. So, like for instance, I said we're going into pitaki some here. That would normally be what we're doing if we're in a year with 12 moons, which is most years. This would be pitaki some, and that is the eagle moon, and it's so named because this is when the eagles mate and when they start nesting, and the owls as well when they start nesting. So you got a phenological reference there, and that I can check against what actually happens in this moon. I can see whether or not the owls in fact do start nesting, whether I see any eagles mating, that kind of thing. So I got a reference point there. I think though that what's going to happen is that they're not going to nest yet. They're not going to nest until the next moon, and so that would make this moon, I believe, Salmetsukitsum, the deceptive moon, so named not because of the shifts in the weather, although we do get weather shifts this time of year, but more so because it is, just as the word says, it's deceptive, and so you can't predict necessarily where it's going to come in. You have to watch the phenological signs and see if it's lining up with the moons, because it's not just every 4th year that you get deceptive moon. Sometimes it can come in on the 3rd year, that kind of thing. So it's not easily predicted, and so I'm gonna have to keep track of what's going on this moon and see whether or not my sense is correct that this is the Salmetsukitsum. Nearly down to the bottom of the coulee now, and I see that at least one of the herds of mule deer is out here in the area where I call the sagebrush flat. They see me. So they're feeding there. I don't know if they're getting ready to head up the side of the coulee or not. Coming down, I've seen lots of deer tracks moving in various directions up and down the coulee. So in the last couple days at least, there's been lots of deer moving in and out of the area. Yeah, they're pretty suspicious of me. One of them's even running toward the coulee edge. They know that they can climb a lot faster than I can. So I'm out on the sagebrush flats myself, not too far from the forest line on the downstream or north side of this floodplain. And I just thought I'd point out this observation. I've always thought that these clusters, there's a couple of clusters here of chokecherry. I've always thought they were interesting. I was just taking a look at them. I was noticing that in the center of this cluster, you have a bunch of dead and fallen chokecherries in the center. I don't know if you can see that, but right in the middle, there's a bunch of dead and fallen ones. Similarly, this other, even larger cluster of chokecherries, if I look in the middle of it, there is, in the same manner, a bunch of dead and fallen ones. And so, you know, it's not like any big revelation or anything, but I think, yeah, you can see them in there. There's a pile of dead and fallen ones, and there's a magpie nest right in there. You can see the snow on top of it. Magpie nest. There was one that looked like getting started at least, or had maybe fallen apart a little bit in the other one. But yeah, I think generally these these chokecherry stands, they start as something like this, right? And then they grow outward, you know, or even something like this. It's an earlier start. And they spit off cherries, and some of them seed, and they grow outward, and they get bigger into clusters, and even bigger into clusters like this. And then by that time, the ones in the middle are very old, and they die, and they fall, and that kind of thing. So that probably eventually you end up with a kind of a chokecherry ring. Neither of these is at that stage yet, where it has a chokecherry ring. I have encountered things where it's like a ring of willows, and there's even a Blackfoot name for that, like a circle of willows. There's certain places that are named after that, after being a circle of willows. It's an odd phenomenon, but now thinking about it, it makes sense why it's like that. Now, why the chokecherries happen to be growing out here on the sagebrush flats in just these couple of patches. Like, why is this even a sagebrush flat? If the chokecherries have the ability to do this, why haven't they already taken over this whole flat long ago? That's the real question, right? Because you know, this place is ancient. I mean, even to grow a patch this big must have taken a long time. But why isn't this whole flat filled with the chokecherries? That is a mystery to me. So I'm currently in this oxbow corridor that I walked at the conclusion of my hike last time I was in this coulee. And one of the last things I was looking at when I visited were the porcupine, geeskach. And I just noticed there's one up here in this tree. I think last time along this corridor I found 3 geeskach, which is not surprising. What's perhaps a bit more surprising is that I'm not finding anyone else. I made note of this last time, that there are these oblong cavities in some of the snags here, the old stumps, indicating that a pileated woodpecker has been using this area last summer probably, and in prior years I had not noticed any pileated woodpecker activity out here, so I'm going to be keeping an eye out this summer to see if we have some returning. And yeah, what I'm really interested in is finding the owls, Kakanoot stokiks, because I know there's a couple down here. Their nesting tree that they used in prior years has fallen over, as I showed in my last video, and so they have to be using something else. They must have made a nest last year, and my challenge is to see if I can find them or that nest. But it's a big floodplain forest down here, and a lot more than you can really cover thoroughly in a day. So in a sense, I gotta rely somewhat on luck, see if I can bump into it. Alright, here's something worth showing. Again, I'm in the oxbow corridor. Haven't gone very far. In fact, the porcupine is just still just right up here. See him there? Anyway, I noticed this, and I thought I'd talk about it quick. You see the bark of this diamond willow, what we call diamond willow, so called because it forms these kind of diamond shape pits in the willow. Anyway, diamond willow, you can see that this one has been utilized in prior years by a sapsucker. That's who makes these marks here, but it has regrown bark in the old sapsucker holes. It doesn't look like there's any sapsucker holes on this one from last year, but what we do see is this shredding of the bark in a couple of places here. And what this is deer antler rubs. This is places where they were scraping their antlers and I think scraping the velvet off of their antlers, basically. And my theory, and this is just a theory, but it's logical. My theory is that the reason the deers choose to do this on willow in particular, which seems to be the case whenever, you know, I've looked around down here, and you're only going to find these scrapings on the willow. When willow's available, that's what they use. And my theory is they use it because willow is a natural painkiller. And I think it hurts and bothers them a little bit when they're pulling that velvet off of their antlers. And so if they are rubbing it against willow bark, they get that natural painkiller into the area, the affected area, and it probably relieves the discomfort a little bit. So that is, I think, a deer medicine. Yeah, so we were just looking at diamond willow, and now I'm in an area. This is still part of the oxbow, but it's the part that's getting close to the river, and this is a really big patch of another kind of willow. This is rabbit willow, what we call rabbit willow, and or in Blackfoot, Otsistottsipis, literally rabbit willow. I think in English this is called sandbar willow. Not sure absolutely, but it's a more of a reddish and more wispy kind of a willow. This is a really mature stand. A lot of times I actually, in the winter, I'll snare rabbits from in this stand. This winter I haven't done any snaring. And the particular rabbit that lives in here, and this is his tracks right here. Backtracking, in fact, going the opposite direction that these tracks were going. This is the mountain cottontail. Blackfoot is called Sikadsista, black rabbit. This is tracks. And you can see that though they don't make their own dens, there is probably a whole family of mountain cottontail using this old shoreline beaver den. This is something that a beaver made when the river had risen up into this oxbow. So normally these rabbits would use just kind of what's called a scrape, which is just a low area that they clear of, that they kind of dig like a little bowl. Some of their droppings there. But whenever there's opportunity like this, they will happily use a nice den that somebody else has created. And they don't have a very big territory, like the area that we're looking at here in this little clearing is about the size of the whole territory of a black rabbit, a mountain cottontail. But they like it to be very brushy, so they'll stay in this area where there's willows, and this is why these particular willows in Blackfoot are known as the rabbit willows. Here's another old shoreline beaver lodge that the rabbits have been using. The other animal that uses these shoreline beaver lodges is porcupine. Porcupines will often den up there as well. Porcupines don't make their own dens. So anyway, just a little bit more about the willow situation. These rabbit willows, or sandbar willow, whichever you prefer to call them, are also used by both the sapsuckers and the deer. And the little shoots, the little new shoots of the willow, are eaten by the black rabbits. In fact, probably right here, you can get an idea of how that looks. It's a little shoot right there. It's been eaten by a black rabbit that left a couple of droppings here. He's been eaten here. So, yeah. So this willow patch is just absolutely full of these small rabbits, and they are very small. There's not much meat on them, but there is some. Here you can see bark removed from this willow, and notice that it's not shredded, it's not hanging in shreds, but it looks more to have been actually chewed off. And that is the work of a porcupine rather than a deer. Okay, I'm very close now to one of the open spots in the river where we saw some geese from above. An open crag pool right where the river turned. One of the downstream pools. Anyway, I'm almost within view of it, and two magpies have flown by. One of them alit on a branch of a bullberry tree beside me, and the geese saw this and got upset. They know he was looking at something. They know something is, they know I'm here already. They know somebody's here at least. So they're on the alert, and I'm going to see if we can sneak a peek at them now. Hear them, they definitely know that something's up. I just saw caught sight of a couple of them. Maybe if I raise this up you can see them on the outer edge of the ice. Alright, now we're within sight. see if there's any ducks. It's important when you're stalking, especially when you're within view of the animals, to go down on the ground, even kneeling, something like that, because the animals do not like to see a standing up human being. It's just something about it. They see the silhouette, the figure of somebody standing up, and it spooks them big time. And just looking downstream here, the other spot we could see from above, it looks like there's a good number of geese there too. Not seeing any ducks. I was curious as to whether there would be any golden eyes here, but no, there's not. Yeah, see, they stood up and it freaked them out. They don't like to see the standing figure, so I'm kind of crouched right now, moving out of their view again. Gonna make my way out so that hopefully I don't disturb them so much that they gotta fly away. Those guys gotta be constantly on guard because I'm a big, noisy, like elephant walking through the grass here. But coyote, they're gonna get right up there very quietly. They're excellent stalkers. Not just coyotes, but you got other predators out here that you don't see as often. But I think the ones that really gotta look out for is the eagle and the coyote. Anyhow, I'm gonna stay out of view and head upstream. Yeah, I've moved off now, and I'm no longer, although they can still see me now, I've just entered into a kind of a area in relation to them where they can definitely see me. I know they can. If I can see them, they can see me, and they are right here. But I'm at a distance to them now where they don't feel threatened, even though they can see me standing up as I am. I have taken time in previous winters to just sit for an hour or more and observe the geese. I'm not going to do that today because I didn't wear snow pants, and you really need snow pants even to stay remotely warm on a minus 11 snowy day sitting and watching the geese. But I just didn't want to portray it as though my only interest is in sneaking up and looking at the geese and then going away. That's not the case at all. I have spent time in prior winters just watching them to learn something from them. I highly recommend doing that. I know that I have not learned nearly more than a small fraction of what can be learned from these geese. What I have observed in prior winters is that when you have groups like this hanging out by the open river crags, some are allowed to sleep. The smaller the group, the more likely it is that the sleeping ones are the women. Because if you get down to a family group, one family group on the ice, it's going to be the gander that is responsible for staying awake and alert. Now another family group comes to join them. Then what I have observed is that it may be the case that, like, if you just have two families there, say you have 10 or 12 geese, right? Two families, you might have both ganders acting alert. However, you get a third family in there, and suddenly one of the ganders who's been there for a while is able to lay his head down and rest, and the new incoming, the gander from the new incoming family will be charged with staying and keeping guard. Now how it works when you have such a big group is what I'm seeing today, and there's one right now that's calling out. You hear him? That's one that's on guard, and he's calling out because he sees me. I'm walking to the river shore right now. See, here's the cut bank. I thought I'm far enough away that I should be able to approach the river shore without them getting too upset. But here is the, I think this is the one that's calling here, the one on guard. One on guard, he's usually standing, but at the very least has his head held high. That call that he's making is just a be aware call. Others are free to relax, even sleep, while the one on guard keeps watch. Now you see, with such a big group, I'm sure there's actually several, or not sure, but I would hypothesize that there are several who will not sleep, several ganders who will continue to maintain guard. But certainly this one, and isn't it interesting that the on-guard gander and his spouse, see, his spouse is allowed to sit, but the on-guard gander is separated away from all the ones who are laying down. I find that interesting. So, you know, this is just one little aspect of the protocols these guys are following. Oh, I see even this distance, you can see porcupine. So that's porcupine number 2 for today. Way up there in the top of the forest canopy at a distance. But yeah, anyway, who keeps guard is just one little part of the goose social etiquette, and I've not studied it enough in this big a group to even say who that is that's supposed to be keeping guard. But I do know that they have rules. I've seen it in the smaller collectives when I'm watching, like I said, just a single family on an ice crag, then a second family shows up, then a third, then a fourth. You can see the shift in who is responsible for keeping guard, and it's usually the new arrival gander who does so. But I would think in such a big group as this, you'd have several. However, it is interesting, is it not, that there is just one being very alert and cautious off the side, and even though I'd imagine, and separate from the others, even though I'd imagine that there are actually several who are alert and not going to sleep. But it's hard to say unless you just really sat here and on several occasions and paid attention to them and what they're doing. You couldn't really say with any confidence. But what I'm seeing today is that there is one couple separate from the others, and that couple is close to the cut bank, which is a very dangerous position because the coyotes can easily come out. And the gander from that couple is very alert, and he's giving the warning signals for all the other geese, or the initial warning signals. And that is, confirmed observation right there. So whether that's normal, I don't know. Alright, now I've reached the area that looked like, the area that I was talking about before, that's deep water, that looked like it's open. It is iced over right now, but I think up until we got the cold shot a few days ago, it must have been open, which is why the snow did not stick to it, because the snow came just before, the snow started just before we got the cold shot. There is open water just a little bit upstream. You can tell because there's a line of geese up there. It's interesting that today the geese are down here instead of up on the stubble fields, because it is a nice day. It would be a good day to be on the stubble fields. Where we were before is at the edge of this water over here, where those geese are. What's interesting is that right here, right along this bank here, there was a large beaver lodge built, I think up until the, I don't know if they're still in there. I'm going to kind of go check it out, but it looks like a lot of it has been washed away. I don't know if they're in there this year. By the floods this year, I think they got their lodge washed away, and they're no longer there. Before they were there, they were right along the cut bank over here. And so isn't it interesting that these places where we have the open water are also the places where the beaver have built their lodges. Hear that coyote? It's the second time that coyote's howled. I haven't spotted him yet. He's watching from up there on the coulee slope somewhere. That's the second time I've heard him call. Any case, yeah. So I don't know if the beavers modify the riverbed and make them deeper in these areas, and make them give them some kind of quality such that they open up the water. I wouldn't doubt it, but they might just select them for that purpose as well. I wanted to show you this. Here we have a trail of what I believe is the western jumping mouse. I have put trail cameras out in the coulee, in this coulee, and I found several different species of rodent. I was looking for rodents in particular. You can see this is where he goes into the subnivean zone. The subnivean zone is the area below the snow, but he comes out, and the reason he comes out is because he eats seeds of various sorts. And we'll just follow his path here and see if we can find. No, there's a. He goes into a hole there. I don't know if we're going to find any of the places where he's been eating seeds, but they like to collect seeds from various plants, and I know some of those plants, like gumweed, they really like gumweed. They really like wild licorice. Here's his trail here. Really like wild licorice. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see where he's been collecting on this little trail, but there are certain things. Russian thistle, he really likes Russian thistle. Certain plants that he comes out and collects above the subnivean. A lot of rodents like the the prairie voles, or the meadow voles I should say, and the sagebrush voles, both of whom I have trail cam pictures of here from this coulee. I think they mostly eat the bottoms of the plants that are exposed in the subnivean zone. But the western jumping mouse, that guy definitely comes out and gets some seeds. And he comes out all winter. Anytime there's a snow, you can find his tracks. So I'm just going over here. I want to check the beaver lodge, see if it looks like there are any beavers there. And the way that I would tell is whether I can see any evidence of a winter food cache in the water in front of the lodge. Certainly, if there are beavers in this lodge, their lodge has been reduced drastically by the last flood, because this was a very large lodge going out into the river, but it is no longer. This is what it's looking like now, and I would say this is almost definitely unoccupied. And this is what the lodge looks like now. And normally, typically, what I would see is right out here in front, there'd be a collection of food that went even above the water. You can see there's a little bit of open water here. So I think all of this was open up until maybe until yesterday. Now you just got a little thin layer of ice on there. Or if it wasn't all the way open, there was certainly a lot of surface moisture, enough that the snow wouldn't stick. So anyway, enough about that. I'm going to move on. Finally, I was wondering when I was going to see any eagles today. Too bad I couldn't get in this viewfinder fast enough, but I just seen a big bald eagle passing over by, checking out what was going on, no doubt. There's a few chickadees in the trees here. See if I can get one of them in the shot. There's one. The bald eagle was really flying high today. I was surprised. Oh, now we've got a woodpecker here. For some reason down here in this forest, it seems to be the case that oftentimes when I see a group of chickadees, I'll also see a downy woodpecker moving around with them. And this downy is here on the tree somewhere. Just flew in. There he is. There he is. Where'd he go? He's just staying out of sight. He's moving over here. He's just staying on the other side of the branch away from me. Yeah, I was kind of surprised at the absence of eagles all day. Finally, one showed up. There's a downy. It's a female. Don't see any red. At least under my viewfinder. She's a little bit far away from me, but yeah, I don't see any red right off the bat. But yeah, for some reason, in this particular stretch, or this particular little area of the river bottom, whenever I come across oh, that is a male. It is a male. There is red, for sure. It's kind of big too. Might even be a hairy woodpecker. But it seems like whenever well, not always, but a lot of times when I come across the group of chickadees, they are moving around with their friend, the woodpecker. I've learned some things from the woodpeckers down here. For instance, I didn't know about poplar borer beetle grubs and how delicious they were until I saw one of the woodpeckers, the hairy woodpecker, pulling one out of a fallen log. I checked the log myself, found one of those grubs. Oh my god, it tastes like candy. Just sweet. I'm in the area right now where the owl nest used to be. Still keeping my eyes peeled for either member of the owl couple who live down here, but I haven't come across them yet. Okay, I'm now right at the confluence of the river and looking at these geese out this way. There's quite a few. Several of them are making alarm calls regarding my presence. There we got some that just taken off. Now, notice I'm not squatting down. I'm within sight, though I'm hidden in the bushes. But being hidden in the bushes is not good enough. If I'm going to be standing up like an idiot, they're going to see me as a monster. They're going to go. At least I think that's what's happened. I've not seen any eagles or coyotes or anything else that would have chased them off. Pretty sure that was all my own doing. That's a lot of geese on the move as a result of me. It's caused the other geese on the river to stir. There's another flock from further downriver heading this way now. If I was hunting geese, this would be a huge fail. Unless I was hunting like an unskilled pussy with a shotgun. But if I was actually trying to get them old school in any way that requires any kind of skill at all, that would be a big fail. So yeah, that's just a demonstration. You saw the two different scenarios. One in which I was able to get very close to geese by not standing up. It's not that they didn't see me, it's not that they didn't know I wasn't there. I was there. It was very obvious to them. But I was crouched down on the ground, and for whatever reason, if you're crouched down, they don't perceive you as such a threat. By standing up, however, even behind concealment, even at a greater distance, they don't like it, and they're out of there. So anyway, that's that demonstration. I saw no ducks whatsoever on the river today. Here, I think they're all down at the wilderness park downstream where I saw them the other day. Okay, I'm making my way up the path toward the coulee rim, and I've just come across this little patch of gumweed here, and I noticed something that I hadn't seen before. This is pretty much all gumweed growing here, and on this particular plant over here, I see down at the bottom there are these gulls, and I've never seen a gumweed gull before. I've paid attention to a lot of gulls out here on the willows, on the roses, on the poplars, on the goldenrods, but I've never noticed these pine cone looking gulls growing at the base or near the bottom of the stem of gumweed. So that's a new one for me. I'll have to see if I can look into who makes that. I'm maybe a little bit more than halfway up the slope now, and I've come across the mule herd who were down on the sagebrush flats previously. The only other person who's walked this trail in the last 3 days of snowfall apparently have been the coyotes. Here's one of the mule deers out in sight right there. The others are just behind this slope here. They're just hiding. Get at a better angle and I'll show you where they're at. I just surprised the herd. Came around the bend and they were right there, very vulnerable, so they're making a run for it now. Sorry guys. I'm not seeing any antlers, so it's possible that the bucks have finally lost their antlers January 21st, or it could be that this is just all does. So, not sure. Yeah, I freaked them out. They weren't ready. They did not hear my approach, apparently. Look at them bunched up. Wow. Bunched up. And from a distance, bunched up, they almost look like a skunk brush on the side of the coulee. And just like one of these other skunk brushes here. But this one is a different variety. There you go, moving out now. Yeah, almost back up on top now, and so I thought I'd make just a concluding, summarizing statement about learning opportunities that have presented themselves in today's hike. First of all, the geese, the way that they're organized, with at least one gander keeping guard, even at the larger group. I'm going to look, when I come to larger groups, in situations like that, again, I'm going to be looking for the whether or not there will be a couple off alone by themselves by the cut bank with the gander keeping guard, just to see if it's a pattern that arises again. Another thing was the open water crag next to the old beaver lodges. So I'm going to keep my mind on that in the future when I come across open water crags to check and see if there are old and or active beaver lodges there. And a final thing is the new, for me anyway, observation of a gall on the gumweed. So I have to research that, find out if I can figure out who makes that gall. So that'll give me another insect connection to the gumweed and a symbiotic relationship. So that's it for today, but even to get 3 interesting things like that in a walk, that's very nice. And any given day can be like that. So spend out here, the more you learn.